2, 1, and go.
Hi, my name is Denise. I'm part of the DLT Talents team and we are hosting this event together with MasterCard. Thank you all for joining. I think we have a very interesting panel discussion ahead of us, and I'm very happy that we gathered such a great panel on this very interesting and relevant topic. And I'm especially excited that these are all leading female experts in the field. As since we started the DLT Talents program, we increasingly realized how important female role models are. Shortly, what is DLT Talents? DLT Talents is a free of charge coaching program with the goal to onboard female leaders into the currently very male-dominated blockchain space, so that they can help shape the future of this quickly developing industry. Our 18 weeks program builds on structured learning guidance, coaching, and networking. And the currently 40 outstanding participants enrolled in our first cohort really exceeded our expectations in terms of how they utilized this opportunity. They accepted each challenge, built a solid network between themselves, connected with very impressive DLT Talents mentors who already made a career in the space, got in touch with further thought leaders and the wider ecosystem, and some even already found new jobs. And before I hand over to Sina, she's already one of our really great and involved DLT Talents mentors. I also want to thank MasterCard. Thank you, MasterCard, for banking on our idea from the beginning and for supporting us as a sponsor. Sina, I'm handing over to you now.
Thank you very much, Denise, for this super great introduction, and welcome everybody to today's panel speaking. I'm extremely super excited, like I even mentioned in the post already, because we have today 60 minutes with 6 different women talking. Denise was the first one, and now let's go on. Quickly introduction about myself. My name is Sina. I'm working, like you can see in my banner, at 21 Shares, but I'm like most of the other people from finance. And in 21 Shares, we are a Swiss company who give you access to cryptocurrencies, which are wrapped in an ETP wrapper, which are actually after at the stock exchange in Germany, Switzerland, or whatever. And this is said about myself. And I would maybe recommend you, because it's more like something administrative. In your panel, I would advise you to make like you would see all the ladies at the same time, because it will be very interactive today, so you can see everybody on the same screen. Then there's a short thing about the timing today. So we will talk, each of the ladies will introduce themselves into 60 seconds, more or less. And after we will have a panel of about half an hour, and at the end we will have questions and answers from you. So we are very excited to have you today. Thank you again also to Denise to have me today. As I said, I'm a mentor for this DLT Talents program, and now it's said enough about me. Let's start with you ladies. If you could please introduce yourself, and maybe we start with Ashley, because Ashley is actually getting up at 5 a.m. this morning to be with us in this panel. So Ashley, please go ahead and welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ashley. As Sina introduced, I work at the World Economic Forum, which you probably know. It's also a Swiss organization based in Geneva. We hold the Davos annual meeting each year. We have a technology headquarters based in San Francisco. That's called the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. That's where we have teams that focus on emerging technology issues. And I'm a project lead on that blockchain and digital currency team, which we have. So I started and lead all of the World Economic Forum's work related to central bank digital currency. And I've also led past projects, actually the leading project on blockchain for anti-corruption that has ever been conducted. We developed an extensive project with the Inter-American Development Bank and the government of Colombia, investigating the Ethereum blockchain for public procurement, and various other projects related to blockchain. And before I was working in blockchain at the World Economic Forum for the past 3 years, I was doing my MBA at UC Berkeley in California. I started the FinTech Club there and ran it for a long time, and the Blockchain Executive Education Program at UC Berkeley. And then before that, I was working in finance in New York for many years.
Thank you very much, Ashley. That was really interesting and intense. Maybe Agatha, if you could also introduce yourself in 60 seconds, please.
Hello, I'm checking if I'm not muted. Welcome, I'm Agata Freira. My name is Agata Freira. I'm a lawyer and an assistant professor at the Warsaw University of Technology. And I also collaborate with a number of other academic institutions in Europe. So I graduated in law from Warsaw, and then I moved to England, where I qualified as a UK solicitor and worked for over a decade in the city of London. First for a top-tier law firm, and then for a Swiss investment bank, specializing in structured finance, cross-border transactions, and financial innovation. After that, I moved to Barcelona, where I did my PhD in international investment law. And over the last few years, I observed the growing gap between pace of law and pace of technology. So I dedicated myself to researching legal and regulatory issues posed by emerging technologies, particularly blockchain. So currently, I am a member of advisory board of the US blockchain company Consensus Health, and a member of advisory council of Blockchain for Europe, as well as member of expert panel for EU Blockchain Observatory and Forum. So thank you for the invitation. I am delighted to be here and participate in this debate.
Thank you very much, Agate. Then I will just go like the ABC. So Caroline would be next, please. If you could introduce yourself.
Yeah. Thank you, Sina. I'm Caroline Casey. I'm the Vice President of Innovation and Consumer Experience for MasterCard in Europe. I've got a fairly diverse remit. I support our product teams on future payment solutions, but I'm also working across our broad range of blockchain initiatives, which I'm sure we'll touch on during this discussion. Prior to joining MasterCard, I spent some time consulting with early stage blockchain projects. And prior to that, I spent about 20 years predominantly in digital product development across everything from e-commerce to massive multiplayer online gaming, video, mobile, social, and I worked for brands including Warner Media, CNN, Yahoo, A&E Networks based in Australia, Hong Kong, and Europe. And I've also dabbled in the startup space.
Thank you very much, Caroline. So last but not least, Isabel, please, if you can introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Isabel. I'm a professor at TU Munich for strategy and organization. And my research is on a lot of things that start with D, like digitalization, disruption, decentralization, also some on diversity, which is related to the other. And I am a co-founder of the TUM Blockchain Center, an interdisciplinary center for blockchain research. And I'm thinking a lot of what we can do in Europe, what we can do worldwide to strengthen entrepreneurship, startup initiatives to benefit the world and address its current challenges.
Thank you very much, Isabel. I think after this role now, we are already warm up is done. So let's first maybe start with the first question. And Ashley, we need to wake her up a little bit because it's very early in the morning. So we start with you, dear, if you don't mind. So we all read about daily news, but where are we today with the whole central bank digital currencies? Because you're in the World Economic Forum, so you can surely give us some insights about this, Ashley.
Sure, thanks for helping to wake me up. Not a planned question. So with central bank digital currencies, first maybe we can reiterate what this is. This is a digitized version of the sovereign currency or the unit of account that's used in the country, usually the sovereign currency in the US dollar or euro, that citizens would have access to in the digital form. That's called retail central bank digital currency. Today we use physical cash in terms of the retail, in terms of the central bank money that citizens have access to, but this would be opening it up to having a digitized form of the central bank money. So a simple way to think of it would be like as if we all had accounts at the central bank. So there's a lot of activity happening all around the world on this. About 40% of central banks, according to a newly released BIS survey, Bank for International Settlements survey that came out in January on this subject, said that they have some chance, they believe they could issue a CBDC in the next 1 to 6 years, that it's either possible or likely, according to their vision right now. That might be a little bit high, but that's what their expectation is right now. And And so on the global level, there's a lot of research underway, a lot of experimentation. Overall, more than 85% of central banks, according to the same survey, are exploring CBDC in some way. Mostly research and early technical experiments like proof of concepts, but some degree, I believe 15%, doing pilot experiments as well. Most of this experimentation involves blockchain because the central banks are researching and trying to get to know how blockchain could help with this concept and how it could be done. But it should be kept in mind that that doesn't mean that it's likely that the end CBDC would be made in blockchain necessarily, because there are a lot of trade-offs with that use of blockchain. But they're experimenting because they're trying to understand all the issues and trade-offs. So that also is the same to be said for CBDC in general. The central banks, including ECB, are currently evaluating the value proposition, the pros and the cons, and they haven't yet determined no major developed economy or minor developed economy central bank has determined that they will definitely issue one because of the pros and cons, which we can get into if Sina would like. But it's a subject they're all looking at, and much more like probably more likelihood and even more active experimentation tends to be happening on the emerging economy side, where maybe we could see work happening sooner in terms of implementation. Of course, China being the big one that's testing now.
Thank you, Ashley. That was quite intense already. I see Isabel is nodding like that. Would you like to add something here, Isabel?
Oh, no, just a question. I mean, one of the fascinating things about blockchain to me is its ability to transform the relationship a retail customer, a consumer has to the purchases consumers make. Like, you know, you buy something in your local flower shop and you just not only buy for the product, but you can also become a part owner of that shop. So I think that's a great potential in transforming the relationship of citizens, consumers with capitalism. And I know that's a topic the World Economic Forum has been very interested in, reforming capitalism, renewing it. Is that something that they discuss with regard to blockchain, or is that a separate discussion? It's just a question to Ashley, not a...
Well, lots putting me on the spot this morning. So I wouldn't say that we explicitly discuss how shareholder capitalism could be manifested or supported through the use of blockchain technology, although I see where your question is coming from. We're all digital currency holders in some protocol. We can have decentralized governance and voting based on our token ownership, and maybe that's an interesting way to think about stakeholder capitalism. But we're a centralized organization as well, and most the companies that we deal with are centralized.
Right? I give everyone a token who wants to participate.
Yeah, so Davos Coin might be happening in the future, but I think for the most part, the companies we manage are decentralized. So that actually gets to a point that I wanted to make during this panel, which is just focusing on that you're in a decentralized environment and you have a reason for decentralization for why you would be interested in blockchain.
That's great. But now I would like to
Can I add something, Sina? Because
sure.
I just wanted to add, because this is quite also important from a legal and regulator point of view, that all this this frenzy activity on CBDCs also reflects the diversity of solutions that could be potentially deployed and that are available for CBDCs, and some of them are quite are not that innovative in themselves, in such that they wouldn't probably mean so many changes to the current institutional design, but some can potentially be quite significant, and they have potentially huge legal and regulatory implications. So I think that there might be a lot of discussions on that as well in diverse jurisdictions, how they approach this topic, because the decision of how to design such a product are quite important for the implications that it might have.
Agatha, it was great, because I also wanted to just hold you in for that one. And are we actually ready for a digital programmable money then, in terms of legal and regulatory frameworks?
Well, you have just used the phrase digital programmable money, and then we just talked about CBDCs, but they may not necessarily come together in all shapes and forms. So I think what is really important, and this is the main probably difficulty, is the regulatory uncertainty around some of these concepts, because there is a lack of clear definitions of some of them and taxonomy for a lot of them. And there is a great uncertainty and misunderstandings among the regulators, among the policymakers and stakeholders as to what these terms mean. So I think the programmability is not necessarily involving a straightforward CBDC design, because we can look at programmable money in many different ways. I'm not sure if it's the right moment to be diving into that, but it really depends on what sort of solutions are implemented, how do they look like, what they involve to answer the question whether legal and regulatory frameworks are ready for programmable money, because it depends how we define programmability. Obviously, certain programmability and automation is already possible right now. So this is not a novelty. What is novel is perhaps, I don't want to hijack the discussion right now because it's a comprehensive topic, but some of the token solutions, the crypto assets per se, they introduce novelty, and there might be regulatory and legal adjustments needed for those.
Mm-hmm. I think it would be probably a great subject for this 2021. I always say to people, like, 2021 would be a key year probably for legal and everything to clean up. So Sandra and Caroline, I have a question for you two experts. So how will current market players be affected? And then on the second point also, Caroline, especially you, will traditional market participants like MasterCard, banks play a significant role in this development?
Yeah, so they're two very big questions. I guess I see MasterCard as a traditional player actually already, playing quite a key role. I think when you go back to CBDCs, governments are looking for private players like MasterCard to work with around how do you actually provide payment rails. So if you've got a CBDC, how do consumers and businesses actually spend that? So we launched a sandbox last year to enable governments and CBDCs to sort of test out their CBDCs in that environment. I think when you look at traditional players more broadly, I think everyone should be educating themselves on blockchain and the technology. Everyone should be understanding what's possible. But I think you also need to think about, how does your business fit into that ecosystem? Where do you bring value, and where do you partner with fintechs? It's no different to probably what we've seen in the broader financial services space, with fintechs entering. As the space becomes incredibly fragmented, you need to partner with people who are, part of that ecosystem, and they help bring, pull the industry forward. I think for MasterCard, one of the things I think is interesting is when you think about our key capabilities, we're a distributed network, we're a neutral party authority, we've got rules expertise, we've got deep financial institutional relationships. They're kind of the components of distributed ledger technology and blockchain, and what the recipe is there. So I think we're in kind of a unique position. But also we've built our own blockchain, and I think it's something that I don't believe everyone needs to build their own blockchain, but we built it in a way just to get that capability as a traditional player to understand the tech. But we also partner with others, and then we also we kind of hold one of the largest blockchain patent portfolios. So we've got 89 globally, and I think it's around 285 pending blockchain patents. So I think traditional players have a role to play, but they need to make sure they're getting into this space. We've been into a number of years and work out what are there. We know our core use cases are around CBDCs, they're around cross-border, they're around provenance. And we kind of are focused on that. So I think, to me, that's the important thing for traditional players to do. And I think a lot of them are doing it, but to be fair.
And Isabel, what do you think about this in terms of the global market players? How would they be affected? I think I called you before Sandra. Sorry about that. I gave you a new name.
Oh, you want me to answer now, or?
If you have an answer, yeah. How would you see the
Well,
current?
I think the thing is, we see new intermediaries emerging right now, and for many of the old financial organizations, institutions, for reasons that I don't fully comprehend, many of them, and MasterCard is certainly not one of them, but many of them are not adapting, are not are not seizing the business model changes and opportunities that come with it. So I think what we will see as this new technology platform of decentralization emerges and will, gradually replace the current one of platform and monopoly and centralization economy, we will see new intermediaries. And maybe we will see some of the old ones who managed on time to transform themselves survive. But my expectation would be that, as always happens, we will see the disruption of many existing business models and value chains.
Perfect. And Carol, I may be coming back also. Sorry, I approach you right away again, but
that's all right.
what is the impact of digital programmable money on current payment infrastructure?
I guess I kind of alluded to it a little bit before. One is cross-border. So that's kind of a pretty obvious one, I think, for most people, and a lot of people are looking at this in the blockchain space. Cross-border payments are obviously quite inefficient, costly. You've got to do multiple hops through correspondent banks. And we believe that blockchain or distributed ledger technology will be able to save time and save money by making that much more efficient to get funds from point A to point B. So that's an area we're looking at. I think then when you look at kind of the other side of the coin is around spending digital assets. And so you may be, and I'm talking about cryptocurrencies here, so you may hold a lot of cryptocurrency, but the problem has always been, I can't spend it easily. It doesn't have an acceptance network. And so we are working with exchanges with a crypto card program for crypto partners who comply with all our rules and regulations and offer the same safe and secure experience. They can issue MasterCard, which means that, so we've done partnerships with WireX, Uphold, BitPay, and a few others, and people who hold crypto with them can go and spend it wherever they would like. I think then when you go the next step, which you will have seen a release last week from us about, is those exchanges are actually exchanging into fiat on their exchange. Crypto is not going onto MasterCard's network. The announcement we put out last week was that this year we will be enabling cryptocurrencies on our network. But that was with a focus on fiat-backed stablecoins. And obviously there was an announcement, we've had so many announcements, an announcement today about central bank digital currencies in the Bahamas being enabled with Island Pay and the Central Bank of the Bahamas. So I think you're seeing this space is evolving super, super fast in the payments industry. There's multiple components to it. There's areas of blockchain infrastructure, improving efficiency. There's on the other side, acceptance of cryptocurrency or digital currencies. And then you've also got this interface with if central banks change to central bank digital currencies, how can we not only help them with that infrastructure, but also how can we ensure that there's no friction for consumers then in spending their funds? So I would say they're probably the kind of the key areas that we're looking at the moment. I'm sure I've forgotten a few, but that's probably a good start.
That's excellent. That's very interesting. I have to bring again the lawyer inside. Agatha, I hope you're ready. So what are the main legal regulatory issues and the concerns related to digital programmable money in innovation?
Thank you for this question. And I have to say that the regulators for a long time have not been very interested in the blockchain innovation. And the catalyst after which we've seen a lot of the interest and activity was actually the Libra announcement. That's where it was a wake-up call for authorities and for the regulators around the world. And since then, we have seen many reports, documents, and statements which have mostly highlighted the risks. So the risks of those kind of solutions in terms, the global stablecoin here in this case, but the issues are very similar with other payment solutions as well. Is basically the consumer and investor protection, AML, KYC, CFT, data protection, market integrity, monetary sovereignty, competition issues, There are quite a few of them: operational resilience and scalability of these networks. So a lot of these reports and documents have highlighted this risk. They have also acknowledged to a certain extent the benefits of those solutions. And as Caroline has mentioned, cross-border payments is one of the main benefits that we can identify, but also faster, cheaper payments and financial inclusion very often. So really the main obstacle for many of these innovative solutions is regulatory uncertainty. And that's what I think the regulators going forward will focus a lot on. And we can see increased regulatory activity in Europe, for example, and some extent in the US, some official kind of statements and responses to this innovation. But one of the biggest challenges, in my view, is international coordination of this regulatory efforts and supervisory efforts, because the technology is inherent. This kind of technology is inherently borderlessness. So there is a need and calls for international coordination, and that is difficult if you look at across various jurisdictions and various geographical territories, so diverse in the economic needs, economic development, the clash of agencies, different mandates. So that's, I think, the main task and difficulty going forward, to provide harmonized regulatory approach to this kind of innovation.
Thank you, Agatha. Isabel, you want to add something? I see. No?
Oh, that's fine.
Someone else? Ashley, let's go.
I'd like to jump in and have us think about what programmability means in terms of what we're discussing. It's not as though cryptocurrency or CBDCs, I don't think, fundamentally introduce a new form of programmability. We have conditional payments and programmable payments today. Of course, I have automatic interest payments made on my accounts, things like this. And in the US, we have food stamps that are electronic with digital currency, a very analog form of tokenized digital currency. You have a prepaid debit-like card, and the beneficiaries receive a fixed amount, and it can only be spent at authorized vendors. So when I think about cryptocurrency or general blockchain-based payments, the thought that needs to be made is what's different about programmability in this decentralized environment. So maybe it's transparency of the conditional functions that will happen, when payouts will happen, and why, because of the smart contract transparency and visibility you have blockchain. It could be about that, or maybe it's transparency and visibility of escrow accounts and the amount of capital that's held in different accounts that would be paid out on the conditional payments. I think that's the main reason for using blockchain in wholesale CBDC operations that are doing cross-border atomic transactions of foreign exchange and other securities. Otherwise, there's not that much value add from blockchain itself. And then on the CBDC side with programmable payments, the question still needs to be asked as well, why is it different? And I think the reasons there boil down to the fundamental difference of using CBDC versus other digital currencies, which is that it's a very trustworthy, you have full confidence that the central bank will redeem the money. It's a very trustworthy currency, but other than that, I don't know that there's extra new functionality.
So what can we expect in terms of innovation? Maybe Isabel.
From whom? Innovation?
What can we expect in terms of innovation in general?
Yeah, from whom? You mean anyone or?
Yes, anyone.
Well, I think the most important innovation would be based on the current pain points, right? If you ask people what bothers them about the companies dominating right now, some of it has to do with data protection and privacy. So I think that will be an emerging theme. And so we'll see hopefully innovation in that regard, enabling people to control their data, yet offer it to companies in a pseudonymized way, so you can actually tailor individual solutions for customers, yet not collect and own and store their data in a data silo somewhere. So I think that's going to be a huge innovation, and other innovations will just redistribute value, right? There's a lot of value created through digitalization, but it currently a large share of the value that's created goes to all these intermediary companies. And so I think some of the hope, at least, is that it'll be redistributed, so those people actually providing some original product or service or solution, and the ones consuming it, not to the intermediary. Like Airbnb takes up to 37% of the whole transaction, up just for being the intermediary between someone looking for a room and someone offering a room. And that, I think, will be part of the innovation.
Excellent. Caroline, you want to add something in terms of
yeah. I mean, I think
maybe, you know?
I thought broadly, I guess, as well as MasterCard, I do feel like that we're just really at the start of the journey. I feel like it's the equivalent of the late 90s was for the web, or, you know, consumer-facing internet technologies. And I think how this will shake out may be different to what we expect. We see the areas we think are implausible for blockchain to be applied, and that may change, and the ones we think are an obvious fit may not be that. And I think there'll probably be a bit of a bumpy road ahead, but I would agree with Isabel on those areas. I think distribution and decentralization are really the interesting things. If you can do something with a single database, do it with a single database. I actually think, where can this be applied that will change the world positively? And I think there are some things that we're actually doing at MasterCard around provenance, which I think is interesting right now, around sort of pharmaceutical, you know, those spaces. I think around identity, it's kind of a bit of a double-edged sword, though, I guess, on identity is there's the privacy issues, so blockchain and not being able to change a record or the history of a record can be problematic there. But having that, when you've got a lot of people displaced, I think there is an interesting opportunity around identity on distributed ledgers. But I think, yeah, very, very early stages. And I think a lot of the stuff as well in the DeFi space that we're starting to see that looks at genuinely decentralized finance is something also that, you know, it's an emerging trend. It's been around for quite a while already, though, but we're starting to see it become a bit more mainstream. So I think that's an area I'm looking at as well around innovation.
If I can add into that, because we have actually conducted, myself, Professor Philipp Sandner, Alexander Bechter, Jonas Gross, we have conducted a research last year, which and we published a paper where we analyzed different payment solutions for DLT-based economy, and we have concluded that actually going forward, this landscape will become very complex and diverse. So I don't think there will be one. We don't think there is going to be one dominant solution just yet, at least. But this growing array of business models and use cases will require diverse solutions, and this landscape going forward will be complex in such this will be different kinds of currencies running on multiple infrastructure, including CBDC at some point, and they will just provide adequate solutions for particular use cases and business cases. And private sector providers will play a part in that as well, because they are more agile, and you know they can come up with solutions that are easily adaptable, whereas central banks have to act accordingly with the mandate, which is usually quite strict and narrowly defined. So our conclusion was that going forward, we will see this increasingly complex environment with multiple solutions that will also cause risks and issues of interoperability. But that's what we think the landscape will look like going forward.
Excellent. So that was actually already part of it. What I wanted to tell you, or what to ask you in general, what needs to be done next to move forward, but more concretely. It goes a little bit what you also said, right? Isabel?
Yeah, I one word, more education.
Yeah, I would agree.
I can say that for Europe. For Germany and Europe, I can say there is not enough education on blockchain. I don't know about all of you, but my impression is when we host conferences, there are maybe the same 10 people that attend on blockchain, because the majority of companies, at least in Germany, they are preoccupied with the fundamental things about digitalization that they should have been doing 10 or 15 years ago. And I sometimes think it won't be helping to try to catch up and build the next smartphone, right? You need to try and anticipate what will be the step, the hardware after the smartphone, and go after that and build the operating system after iOS and Android. And so that's, I think, education, I think, is my answer to that.
Education is key then. Do you ladies, experts, have maybe something like a book or something like where should the audience,
Twitter.
More. Twitter. Where else?
Ditch the newspapers. I think that of course, it'll be, journalism will be disrupted. Follow the right people on Twitter. I think it's the best education ever.
Isabel, who are the right people?
Oh, you know them. I love Eric Thorenberg. He's like a gem, undiscovered, I think, in Europe. And I would sign all his tweets. And obviously Naval, still not so much known, or Antonio Pompliano. And if you start following, 3-4 of them, then it's like it's like a self-reinforcing effect. You will be referred to others, etc. But I think the beauty of Twitter, I think, is that it forces you to be concrete, tell a story, and be brief. And in our day and age, no one has time, right, to read a whole book. I could name several books, but I think if you follow the right people on Twitter, they have insights, you'll be way better informed than if you read many newspapers.
I have to disagree. I use Twitter a lot, and I definitely like it to engage and to keep up with the space and to learn about trends. But while Twitter forces you to be brief, it doesn't force you to be correct. Anthony Pompliano, for instance, I have a hard time with. I think he spread a lot of misinformation, including that, a one-page article a few years ago, back when I stopped following him, about how the ECB doesn't know what inflation is, and we're gonna have runaway inflation in the Eurozone and that kind of stuff.
It's provocative for sure, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of cryptocurrency people want to give economics advice, and they don't even have an undergraduate degree in economics. So I think
it's a fair point, but let me ask you, do you think that, and again, I can only really say this for German newspapers because, that's what I read. Do you think that the journalists that write for newspapers are correct, or are held accountable in any way if they misrepresent information? I think I agree what you said, that not all the information is correct, fully agreed. And probably we could think about a blockchain mechanism that, or we need to think about a mechanism that validates the quality of news. That would be very valuable as an innovation for society. But I wouldn't say that there's a big difference to major newspapers. I mean, for instance, in Germany, all this masks don't help, all of that was printed. I felt a lot better informed about this whole pandemic just reading through Twitter, not believing a single source of information, but reading through what people were saying and forming my own opinion. Much better than the national news, the publicly financed national news on Germany informed me for months about this pandemic.
I think you have to be careful about who you follow, and you can follow follow economists and listen to them about what they say about the economics of blockchain. And same with COVID-19 and Twitter, certainly agreed. I don't learn about blockchain from the news. I think that there's one source I recommend that's very good. That's a textbook. You can find it for free on the internet, a PDF, something like Princeton Bitcoin textbook. It's published by Princeton from 2016 with a few authors, and it goes through a lot of the technical details of blockchain. And it's by computer scientists who are writing about computer science, and it's very good. And so I think you learn about blockchain through multiple sources, because there aren't many good single sources, but just be careful about what you read, and that's not coming from a real expert in that specific field, and match it with your own critical thinking and questioning, because the cryptocurrency ecosystem perpetuates its own, the benefits of cryptocurrency. And if you speak about trade-offs and negatives about it, you're called a no-coiner or overthinking, things like that. And that's just thinking. It's just critical thinking.
Actually, thank you.
Yeah.
I thanks for bringing this up. Maybe I was too brief. I fully agree. Of course, you can follow crazy people on Twitter, and that the judgment has to be in between. Who do I source my information from? And I would advise anyone to deliberately follow people who challenge what you think and who disagree with what you think. That's how we become smarter. And not enough people are doing that, I think. They rely on either the national news or but if you have a diversified and you know how to judge the quality of information, I think it's a great news source, a great real-time news source.
And I probably am similar to Isabel. I guess I differentiate between crypto Twitter and Twitter, and actually Twitter itself has some good people who you can really learn from. But it is very hard, I think, for people to work out who they are, who's trustworthy, and who's kind of just shuffling information around that maybe not in others' best interests. But I do think one of the other things that I spent a lot of time doing and still do is reading white papers. And I think reading white papers is actually a very good way. I mean, obviously at a base level, read the Bitcoin white paper, but I think beyond that is you start to see when you look at projects and you read their white papers, you start to see what are the emerging trends in technologies and algorithms and things like that, that maybe. I think the problem with media is mainstream media in particular on this topic is that it's always the sexy headlines about, Tesla buying crypto and things like that. And that doesn't help people educate themselves on the genuine technology and its capability. And it's kind of a rarity to see that sort of article covered in mainstream press. But I think, there's probably some of those other sources and reading some books. I think then it gives you the basis for understanding what's possible.
I completely agree with all of you ladies, because we can see also 21 shares, and we are obviously completely in the crypto space, but very regulated. So nothing like fancy, whatever. We are the blockbuster, actually, not Netflix. We always say to people, and we have our own research team, and we have the same issues like many people write like whatever on the news, and it gets completely confused and people get scared and so on. But let me maybe ask you also, Ashley, because in your experience breaking into the blockchain field in 2017, we know that, what does it take to succeed, and what it's your advice for someone interested in succeeding in this place?
Thanks, Sina. So I think what we've all been talking about is the first step is teaching yourself, learning. I think you have to go the extra mile with blockchain. I think it's harder than traditional industries in the aspect that you have to read and teach yourself a lot from all these sources, like this textbook I mentioned, the white papers, as Caroline mentioned, experts. And then you can attend conferences and engage and listen to people and talk to people. But you have to sort of get the information from many sources. And, I spent weekends for years. I work harder than a lot of people. So it takes the extra work to read and to teach yourself and to learn about it. I think to succeed is one point.
May I cut you, Ashley? Because we have from someone, I know it's normally at the end, but someone asked, hi guys, could you please repeat the suggested must follow expert on Twitter? I think people are really carefully writing it now. So could you maybe say someone like the people should really follow? Because Ashley also know, right?
I can add mine to the chat after this.
Maybe we could do that, right? Can everyone see the chat? Because I actually have to go on Twitter and look through the list.
Okay.
And Eric Torenberg, I can really recommend. Eric Torenberg.
And then, so one other thing I wanted to mention is another Women Diversity in Blockchain initiative, in addition to DLT Talents, one from Berkeley from California is called SHE-256, SHE-256. It's a play off of SHA-256 hash function, which is used in Bitcoin. And it's a big community of women in blockchain, I guess mostly in the US, but they have a lot of talks and things like that. So there are all those types of communities that exist to learn from as well. And then I think if you can get your hands dirty and get involved with projects, that's the best way to learn. And then each of these things snowballs and leads you to one more bigger way to participate in the blockchain ecosystem, and then you keep learning.
Perfect. Thank you.
I hear, maybe someone has insight. I mean, there are many Telegram channels, right? I'm not involved in that, but obviously I think there are these, as you said, Ashley, communities where this information is exchanged. And I think it's really, really important to be part of that and to find that.
In Germany is Crypto Compass, which is also quite good. It's in German. The ones who are German speaking, Crypto Compass is quite good. But well, sorry I cut you, Isabel. You're muted now.
Maybe we can afterwards just everyone gives their 3-4 top tips and we share them. Would that be an option? I'd actually be interested in knowing what you all recommend to say.
Perfect. I have the last question for you ladies before we go to the question and answers, and we have 2 minutes before that. It needs to be speed up. Where will we be in 5 years?
Year 6 of lockdown. Oh, that was a joke.
I mean, I think it will be hopefully a more mature technology. And I think kind of going back to the discussion with Ashley around what do you need to get into blockchain, I actually hope that there's a maturation in the industry. And I'm already starting to see it, where actually you don't have to know what's under the hood to work in the industry. You don't have to be able to read a white paper, and write a white paper to work in it. Like when I started in the internet in mid-90s, you kind of had to hand code HTML. You had to be, you kind of had to know everything, how everything worked and fit together. Now it's just the technology that underlines everything. So I guess I would hope we're at the point where someone who's in marketing works in blockchain, but doesn't necessarily have to know all the ins and outs. So I guess that's just on the kind of industry side.
Agate, legal point of view, where are we in 5 years?
Well, hopefully, from legal point of view, with more certainty and more understanding, more comprehensive regulatory response, better taxonomy, better, better at defining those in those innovation phenomena. And I have to say, Caroline, when you were saying that you read white papers, from my point of view, when I do read them, I find a lot of mislabeling of terms as well. So that goes with how still understanding, maybe not so much understanding, but lack of collaboration between different communities to arrive at standards, to arrive at some sort of common understanding of how we name these things, how we treat these things. But personally, what fascinates me and what I'm looking forward to see what's going to be in a few years' time is how this paradigm of money is going to evolve, because really with the programmability, so the ability to encode into a token certain rules, into a payment token certain rules, is sort of shifting this paradigm and adding new dimension to money than just the unit of account. So I'm fascinated with that, and I'm fascinated to see how it's going to develop and what sort of implications will it have, and how it will change the function of money perhaps in some way. So that's my focus going forward, to observe that.
Thank you, Agate. Let's go to the question and answers, ladies. Are you ready? I read a little bit now because we have a lot of questions. So apparently, people are really following. Watch out. So how do countries select which blockchain is best for what purpose?
Companies or countries?
How do countries select which blockchain is best for what purpose? It's a very open question.
Countries.
Countries with the CBDCs.
Yes, I guess to the CBDCs. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So yes, maybe there's like 2 ways to answer this. One is for CBDCs and others for other public sector blockchain applications. So I worked on a large one of those in the past, as I mentioned. So I think they evaluate what they're looking for and the problem that they're trying to solve, which is the first step. What are you trying to solve? And making sure that you want blockchain in the first place, because I think that's often overlooked. And then what are their needs? What kind of technical performance do they need? What other conditions do they need? And then they can find blockchain that makes sense for them based on that. And it could not be a public blockchain. It might be a permissioned blockchain instead. It just depends on what they're looking for in terms of how decentralized they want it to be, or transparent or not transparent, whether they're okay with using cryptocurrency or not. That could be problematic for a lot of public sector institutions. This is for these public sector applications, not talking about CBDC right now. Scalability is a big problem in public permissionless blockchains, and any large scale applications aren't going to work on them right now. So public sector would see that as a major constraint. And then just a general instability in public permissionless blockchains is an issue, unless you're talking about something like Bitcoin, which has a lot of miners and a lot of history next to it. There could be governance challenges with any blockchain, and forking activity. The amount of miners participating in securing the network via their participation could drop, things like this. And then the protocol would be weaker. When we're talking about CBDC, I think they're not going to use public permissionless blockchains because of too many issues with scalability. And like, why would they issue their own digital token on a blockchain that already has a digital token? So if they do it with blockchain, it would probably be with permissioned, and then they'll go through that same exercise of thinking through what criteria they need and matching it with the best permissioned blockchains available. But they could also not use blockchain for CBDC.
What are the pros and the cons for CBDC?
I don't want to speak too much. Does someone else want to take that? Or
what are the pros and cons for CBDC?
So for developed economies and emerging economies, it can meet different policy goals. Those would be the pros. So for instance, it can serve as a way for the public to have access to a safe and reliable means of payment or place to store their money if one doesn't exist in the economy. That usually exists in developed economies already. Maybe if there's cross-border access for wholesale or retail CBDC, a pro would be that it could increase the efficiency of cross-border payments, as we've been talking about on this panel. Other ways that it could be used to meet beneficial goals for the economy could be financial inclusion, which we've mentioned. It's not very clear whether there's a slam dunk case for CBDC for financial inclusion, but the channels that it could help there could be things like incentivizing people to participate in the banking network if they haven't yet, or in a financial account by, like, maybe the country says, okay, we're going to pay you $500 if you open up an account with our central bank, something like that, or they're able to offer to citizens a central bank account that's better than or easier to offer than the commercial bank accounts, or some other way to incentivize their participation. Or maybe the CBDC presence through competition forces the private sector players to lower their fees, or private sector commercial banks to increase the deposit rates that they pay to their depositors, which gets more people involved in the banking sector. That's another way that financial inclusion could be achieved. So there are multiple policy goals that CBDC could achieve, but it depends on the conditions of the country, whether that's relevant to that country. I mentioned some of these, and then cons would be like sort of the opposites of each of those, or how those things could go wrong. And there's many. There could be financial sector instability. The example that I meant, so for instance, maybe people move quickly from their commercial bank account to their CBDC account, and banks lose their deposits quickly, or just in general, banks have fewer deposits, which interrupts their ability to lend, which interrupts credit allocations in the economy, and lots of complexities there. It could not be very technically secure, and there could be an attack on the CBDC system, which would cause substantial reputational issues for the central bank and interruptions to the payment system if the CBDC is widely adopted.
Thank you, Ashley.
There could be privacy issues.
I think we could talk here for hours just about the pros, the cons, but let me also ask you more questions, because the audience sent me tons of questions. And one of it is, I thought it's quite interesting, even for me, in terms of point of view. Where do you see the future of cryptocurrencies, for example, Bitcoin and Ethereum and DeFi projects, when CBDC appears? And this is something I get asked for a lot of time about our clients. What do you say about that? Maybe Isabel, you're following that?
I don't know that it would have, I think that the future of cryptocurrency, what the assumptions that drive that, I don't think necessarily rest on a digital central currency. What I'm more interested in is the question, how will central banks respond to cryptocurrencies in the future, and how will regulation respond, and how will the media respond? Because I think that influences the future of cryptocurrencies in a substantial way.
I'd probably agree. I think probably, I mean, it'd be interesting to hear from Agatha on this, because I would have thought regulation is probably going to have a bigger impact than anything, especially if there's a lot more rigor around some of the long tail of crypto, but also even in the short tail, we're seeing some, in the regulation reviewing some of the bigger projects at the moment. So I think that's going to be a big impact.
I think so. In our day and age, right, with social media coming up, a lot is dependent on the story that is about a certain asset or about a technology. And so what will the story of cryptocurrencies be like in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? And I think that depends on a lot of, social media, the traditional media, partly regulation, of course, but if you ask the average person, even educated probably people, how does a MasterCard transaction work? I don't think anyone can explain that. Still, they use it and they trust MasterCard, right? So it's more, do you watch what is your fellow neighbor doing? How are they using it? And how do they talk about it? I think that's going to be decisive. I don't know, maybe Ashley has some insights on how digital central currencies are going to influence that.
Well, if I may say something, I think cryptocurrencies in the kind of narrow meaning of that term is a different type of asset and different value proposition than CBDC will be, and they sit on different networks. They, if we talk about, cryptocurrencies per se, that sit on this, decentralized issuerless networks, then they perform different function than CBDC that will probably be just means of payment, because some cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin is more characterized as a store of value going forward, for example. So I think they are not necessarily exclusive. I think there is going to be place for all these products going forward. And regulation will also play a part, of course, and we can see, I'm looking forward to see how it's going to develop in Europe, where new regulation that is currently being proposed will come into force and will shape this ecosystem, and we're going to see if it's going to be to greater advantage of Europe as a region, or perhaps it will be an opportunity for regulatory arbitrage and some of these products moving somewhere else to other jurisdictions. So I still maintain that it will be a very complex ecosystem and landscape going forward with those multiple products coexisting.
Thank you, everybody, for this super great panel. Now I have the question for you, ladies, and we have a very short time left. We have actually 3-4 minutes left. So if you could give now to all your audience kind of a brownie bag, something back from this panel today, what would you give them? But really shortly, from each of you, I would like to have 1 point. What should they take out of this panel today? And we start with Ashley.
Read and learn and think for yourself about the space, and takes extra work. And really think about what the value of decentralization is and if it's needed, and that will point to whether blockchain adds value and how you should do the blockchain.
Agate, what do you think? Give them a brownie back.
I'd say watch the space. For many people, they still consider it a niche territory, and it's not anymore. I think it's becoming mainstream, the use of this technology, the implications not only for financial sector but for society at large. So I would say watch the space and consider it your issue as well, and be interested, because it will sooner or later you will be impacted by that, every single one of us.
Isabel, you can next, please.
Same direction. I will reread Anthony Popliano's tweets critically, and
and question them though.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point, and I think another potential variable application of blockchain has to do with, for society, for business, for governance, the quality of information and echo chambers, and how we can find a way to sort of send signals into the information market on how what quality a tweet or any news article actually has. That would be really, really helpful.
And by the way, I just know that we will give you who to follow on LinkedIn, which will be later on in Frankfurt Schule of Blockchain Center. So you can see the names which we advise you to follow. But last but not least, Caroline, what do you give to the audience then from this?
A little bit of a replication of, I think, the others. I think definitely educate yourself, make sure you understand it, don't just go beyond the headlines. And I think that to me is the main thing, is getting beyond the headlines, really understanding what it's about, and then understanding how you could apply it, where you fit into the ecosystem and where your business or whoever you work with fits in, and how you can bring value.
Perfect. So I would say thank you to all the ladies. I think the panel really rocked. Everybody was talking. Ashley woke up. That's very good. I'm happy about that. She was always ready since the beginning, but just like to tease her a little bit.
I am, right.
Seriously, we 4 ladies or 6 ladies all together. We have never met in person. We should get once together, get a drink together, and discuss this and other subject more in details. For you, audience, I thank you very much for everybody who was in today. I think we had a very large crowd today, very varied people from all over the world. Thank you for watching us. Thank you for your interest. We seriously hope that you learned something today and you got some serious good points for your own career, for your own life. And it was a pleasure to be with you. If you have any questions at the end, you could send an email chat to team@dltt.io. We will mention this also in the post of Frankfurt Blockchain Center. If you have any questions, please send an email there. And have a good day. Enjoy your rest of the day, and see you soon again. Bye-bye.
Thanks for an excellent moderation. Very lively, very entertaining. Thank you, Sina.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone. It was great to meet you. Bye-bye. Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Really great.